What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Kicks and Picks podcast. Nick, Coach Steve, Scotty, back with you. First show of February, coming off of a much needed get us back on track, scorching hot January. 23, 11, and 5 on the month, up 7.6 units. Um, 4 winning weeks in a row, I believe. So,
Yeah.
or at least 500 or better. So we were really hoping to build on back-to-back 7-win weeks. Wound up with 2 draws last week, but it is okay. We move forward. We got Coach's team rolling in Serie A. Big matchup this week with Inter. Another big matchup in Serie A, Milan taking on Napoli. And we're a little bit all over the place in the Premier League, so we will try to make sense of it for you. Boys, fixture list isn't getting any less congested. We've seen cup matches, we've seen travel, we've got Champions League coming back
Sure
this
do.
week. So if you guys are listening to this, make sure you listen or be on the lookout for the Champions League content we will be putting out, whether that be in podcast form or written form. Both excited about that. Looking to pick up a future for the third straight year. But teams are rolling along. A mixed bag. I know Coach's team, like I said, coaching change has looked good. Scotty, Liverpool handed their second loss of the season last week. Maybe we start there and start in the Premier League. But any quick thoughts on Pool?
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about it in my piece I do on happyhoursports.net every week. That looked like a match where one team just really wanted the result far more than the other, and I think it kind of made sense. If Arsenal lost that one, they'd be 8 points back of Liverpool. They'd also have just lost. I mean, no excuses. Like Liverpool still fielded a strong lineup, but they were still without, Salah and Soboslai and some of their key players, whereas Arsenal were largely healthy for the first time. Um, and you could just tell like Arsenal just really wanted the result more, especially at home. I don't think they've lost a game at home yet this season because they also beat City at home. And Liverpool just looked like they were a step and a half behind in most cases. Like even the goal they scored was like a jammy little deflected goal off of the keeper. So yeah, I'm not too down about it. Like Liverpool still control their own destiny in terms of the title race. It's going to come down to kind of what I've assumed since November, really, that it's going to be whoever wins at Anfield between City
No.
and Liverpool in March. The good news for Liverpool is that they don't really have to deal with Europa quite yet. They've gotten that bye into the next round
Yeah,
by winning
weird
their
format
group.
change.
Yeah, so City will still have to play. I think they're playing Copenhagen, so it's not really anybody challenging, but they still have to play Champions League midweek. Liverpool will not. City's schedule in March is a little bit more challenging. I think they have United and their local derby plus Arsenal and maybe Newcastle, I think, all surrounding it. So I guess it kind of favors Liverpool in that sense, but I don't think it can be lost on anybody that watched the games this weekend that City are themselves fully healthy. They started De Bruyne and they started Holland for the first time in probably the first match of the season, I would have to guess, right? I think that's the last
Crazy,
time they
yeah.
both started together. And it showed. I mean, they put out. I mean, they didn't even score. It was Foden that did all the heavy lifting, had a hat trick, but they look lethal. So it's going to be another classic, Pep Guardiola versus Jurgen Klopp race to the finish. And we'll see who blinks first because the last few times this has happened, City has put together like a 15 match win streak to end the season. So there's no wiggle room, but you know it's a downer, but I would call that really a nice to have match for Liverpool versus a must have for Arsenal.
Yeah. And I mean, for what it's worth, I feel like they were still in it to potentially get points up until that red card. I mean, Arsenal were the better team for the whole match. I'm not disputing that, but Poole still had a chance. And I mean, that's
Yeah.
all you could really ask for going into the 80 something minute away from home.
Yeah, and you can see just like without Salah, without Nunez, who didn't start that game, Trent, went off at halftime. Robertson didn't start. Like the creativity without those guys, and even to an extent, Soboslai, it struggled. But I think the good news is like this isn't like a long term thing. Like Salah is probably closer to being back than not. Thiago who Liverpool haven't seen since March of last year, was on the bench for the first time. I think people forget just how good that dude's been in midfield for many, many years. And, thinking about adding him to a midfield of, McAllister and Soboslai is pretty fucking incredible, especially when you have Trent on one wing and potentially Robertson back healthy for the first time since October on the other wing back position. So, I think they'll be good to go for the long run. It's just going to come down to really who can stay the healthiest through the next 3 months.
For sure. And coach, just quickly, I don't know who's hotter, Roma since De Rossi got appointed, or you in the month of January, because I feel like you carried the pot a little bit. We haven't talked about it, but you had some monster weeks, man, stacked up for us.
Yeah, I think coming off back-to-back 3-0s, right?
Yes,
If I
sir.
remember right.
If I were you, I'd be bragging about that a little more, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, things are starting to look up a little bit. Obviously, weak schedule in terms of 3 teams they beat under the Rossi: Verona, Cagliari, and Salernitana. Not in that order. They're coming off Cagliari this past week, which was the best of the results, 4-0 win. Cashed us one of my bets. I think cashed all 3 weeks on them, and betting with my heart worked out in these cases because of the mismatches and being able to exploit those lines a little bit. Can't say I'll be doing the same this week with them hosting Inter, but certainly different style of play, a little enthusiasm around the style of play. He's trying to play a little more offensive. He takes some of his philosophies from the Luis Enrique days when he played under Luis Enrique at Roma, I know, and which is that Pep Guardiola school of thought. Not that Roma's anywhere near city levels anytime soon, but just trying to play a little more offensive. I think for us Romanisti, it's a nice change up when you're watching matches on a week to week, which these last 2 have been Monday, so it's been hard to watch for me. But in terms of being able to sit through a match when you are watching it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. There's certainly going to be some growing pains switching from a back 3 to a back 4. We saw that in the first 2 matches against Hellas and Salernitana, where they did concede and did absorb some pressure late with leads. But the players seem to be more upbeat. I think the biggest takeaway has been Pellegrini has been on fire since De Rossi took over. Maybe there's a little coincidence there, maybe not, but 3 goals and an assist in 3 matches since De Rossi's taken over, his old teammate, fellow Roman captain. So maybe there's that, little nudge that De Rossi can give him, that little pep talk that he can really relate to him and what he's going through. And that's really sparked his game. And it's really sparked Roma. I mean, Dybala's been on fire. I think it was in his last 11 matches. I think I saw the tweet put out by IFTV. I think 7 goals and 3 assists, something to that effect. So it's been a really good run of form. Inter comes in this weekend. I know we'll preview that match in just a bit, but certainly got to be feeling good as a Romanista. At least that Roma is back in the top 4 race. I think they're a point behind Atalanta. Yes, one more match played, but things are on the up and up a little bit.
Like you said, we'll get into the match, but the one comment I want to make is it's probably just like a little bit of a freer experience that, like you play under Mourinho, there's expectations that come with that, right? And not saying top 4 isn't a possibility or realistic, but I don't think anybody is gonna be mad at this point if they don't make top 5. Yes, you're going to be upset that you didn't make Champions League, but the expectation is not to make Champions League the same way it would have been maybe under Mourinho. So I feel like there's something to be said about that.
And the Mourinho people, will go into the conspiracy theory. They didn't buy anybody for him, and now they bring in Angelino, they bring in Baldanzi. There'll be those people, but
don't act like they weren't coming in whether Mourinho was there or not.
Well, I don't know if those profiles would have been coming in under Mourinho. That's the thing. I think the way they went shopping changed a little bit with a different philosophy in what they're looking for now, right? You play more offensive, so a young Baldanzi, which can be like an understudy to Dybala, they play that same kind of free role. It kind of gives you a second option. When you want to rest Dybala, or if he does get hurt, which we know happens quite often, and maybe you could avoid the injuries a little bit by having someone who plays a similar role as him against some maybe the lower clubs in the table. And Angelino, breath of fresh air in terms of crossing, because if you've watched Roma enough this year, you know that the fullbacks have not been able to cross balls into Lukaku and anybody else that's in the center of the box. So I don't know if those profiles, because Mourinho's profile player has been the bigger, more burly type players that they've brought in the past few years. But that has certainly been welcome. It's definitely a big change though in terms of like, and I think expectation, by the time Mourinho was fired, they were in 7th or 8th place in the table. So yeah, the Champions League becomes like a little bit of an afterthought. What I'm curious to see, because we're getting back into Europe this week after Inter, is how do they manage Europe? Feyenoord again for the third straight year will be interesting. Feyenoord will be out for blood after Roma beat them in the Conference League final, and then I don't remember if it was the round of 16 or the quarterfinals last year of the Europa League, but the Dutch side's gonna be out for blood. De Rossi's gonna be managing his first European experience, so it shall be interesting. The one also thing that's interesting is the fact that it's only been 3 matches, but De Rossi had a very poor stint in his only other managerial experience at Spal, and I think it goes to show, when you want to play a certain style of football, you need players to play it. Roma's not an elite European club, but having a top of the top, I don't know, like 6th or so European, club in a big league is much easier to do that with than at Spal.
Sure.
And even the owner, Joe Tacopino of Spal, Italian American owner, I think mentioned that De Rossi just didn't have the tools to succeed there. It was kind of out of his control a little bit. It's interesting to hear.
Yeah, we'll see how he does. Big test this week. So I'm going to quasi bring back buy or sell. We haven't done a buy or sell segment in a while, but the Premier League here, this is going to be a two-parter.
Is this why you wanted to host, Nick? Because you didn't want to talk about Lazio losing 3-1 on the weekend? We're going to talk
we can talk about it.
Our teams.
Wait. What do you want to talk about? I think smart people took Atalanta to the bank. I don't remember if we talked about it last week or not, but I can tell you certainly Atalanta team total was like the easiest bet I had all weekend.
Demolition derby over there.
We can talk. Listen, it's I don't want to get stale and say the same bullshit about Saudi. I think Saudi is a problem. I think tactically he doesn't do anything, right? I think he doesn't motivate the players. However, the players are just as big, if not more of a problem. I mean, the quote unquote improved squad that finished second place last year. Yes, you lost your very best player, but you got guys who are shells of themselves, not doing anything remotely close to what they did the year before, and they just look uninterested. I mean, Pedro, bench player, but hasn't had one good performance that I could remember. Felipe Anderson is already thinking about his next move in the summer. He looks terrible. Zaccagni can't really stay on the field. Immobile is obviously another year older. He's hurt. He's not getting the playing time. Tati, who they brought in, is awful. Kamada has been awful. He's obviously off with his national team.
So Nick, why is this Saudi's fault then? Because if they had,
that's what I was just saying.
That's
what I said.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. That's what I just said in the middle of my argument. He's a problem. Okay. He's not the only problem. Right. These guys at some point have to. We have to place blame on the players who are not performing, and his tactics certainly are stale. But if you can't beat the bottom half teams, and if you're back to back getting absolutely run off the pitch by Inter and Atalanta, everybody gets blamed as far as I'm concerned. So he is a problem, but he can only do so much with the players and the performances that are in front of him. At some point, somebody has to get motivated, whether that's internal because you're an athlete or whether that's the coach. There needs to be something going on.
Yeah, and I know the winter market isn't like prime buying season for especially a lot of these Serie A clubs. I can rejoice as a Roma fan that they brought in Baldanzi on a permanent deal, who's one of the better talents in the Italy setup. And then, I think a solid loan deal for Angelino and Hoyson. But, Lazio did nothing to address any of their needs, right? They didn't bring in not a soul. So
ever.
Well, silver lining for you, Nick, is you guys might have an extra day of practice next season, midweek, where you don't have to worry about going to any European games.
No question. Listen, they got to really figure it the fuck out, and soon, if they're planning on even making 7th place. Reality.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, back to buy or sell in the Premier League. Two-parter here. I'm gonna run through some odds for you guys. The lot of lopsided matchups. We have massive favorites. Man City is -500 playing Everton. Liverpool -600 playing Burnley. Tottenham -125. Brighton is +285 in that game. Newcastle +105. Forest is +245. Similar. Arsenal minus 190 to West Ham, Chelsea minus 110 to Palace, Villa plus 115, United plus 210. So 7 teams that I mentioned, I am going to ask a buy or sell. How many of these 7 teams will get upset and lose outright? City, Everton, Pool, Burnley, Tottenham, Brighton, Newcastle, Forest, Arsenal to West Ham, Chelsea to Palace, Villa to United.
So we're going to lose
can we make
outright,
that
not just
Right
drop
now,
points.
first half of my buy or sell is what's going to be the upset, or will there be any upsets? Upsets.
Can we just set the total of upsets to 2.5 and take under over? Is that allowed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
2.5.
That's where I would set the
under.
number, 2.5.
In terms of losing outright, I'd go under.
I was going to say 1.5 for that point.
Yeah, losing outright, I'm going under.
Okay. Losing outright.
Will anybody lose outright? Let's phrase it that way. Is there a team here that loses outright?
If I'm looking at one, maybe it's Chelsea because they're on the road. I'm looking at a lot of these big favorites are at home. City's at home, Liverpool's at home, Spurs at home. Newcastle I think could be vulnerable on the road, but I'm looking at that as more of a drop points, which was the second part of your question. I'm looking at maybe Chelsea on the road at Palace to lose outright, but it's hard to say any of these teams will definitively lose outright. Even Villa at home, I think they bounce back a bit from today's defeat.
I don't know. I think, losing outright, I think Villa, Chelsea, based off of how bad they've been, although they've had a little bit of hope here and there that gets dashed in. So maybe this is one of those periods of times they have hope. The weird one that I'm going to actually circle, which doesn't sound right coming from a Liverpool fan, is Arsenal. I think this is due for a letdown game. They just beat Liverpool at home. Now they got to take on West Ham, who have had moments where they've looked really, really good, and then they've had moments where they've looked pretty bad, but certainly capable offensively. And it's really a matter of if they can keep their defense, in shape and kind of limit some of the damage that they've allowed, like they did in the first half of the season. So I weirdly, I think that's almost like a trap game for Arsenal. I could see them coming in and, conceding 2 quick ones and then being kind of caught off guard. I mean, people forget they really have had, offensive challenges up until like the last 2 weeks, especially with their forwards. So I wouldn't count that one out. Newcastle, I would get people's argument about why they could lose. Their away form all season long has been horrendous. They've really, not that they're sitting in the top, 5 or 6 spots, but they are in the position that they are in right now on the table because of their home form. So I think that's certainly an opportunity for like Coach said, drop points or, who knows, crazier things have happened. But that's probably where my head would be at now. I don't think City or Pool are really any threat. I would say Tottenham maybe, but Brighton have looked really bad.
Terrible.
In recent weeks. They got absolutely smoked by Luton Town midweek last week. So I think that one, is a little bit more safe for Spurs fans.
Okay. I would say, gun to my head, I kind of agree with you, Scott. I think Arsenal and or Chelsea are the two like prime candidates for letdown games. They don't, Chelsea, do you bank on them scoring a ton of goals 2 games in a row? I certainly don't. And I think Arsenal has nowhere to go but down. West Ham has been okay. But I'm going to go to phase 2 of my question, and I guess we can set an over-under for this one. Forget about upsets. How many of these favorites, 7 games, will drop points this week? So I will set that at a solid even 3. I think 3.5 is tough for 7. So over under 3 of these favorites drop points this week.
Coach, I'll let you go first.
Over under 3. I'm going to go. I think I'm still going to go under because if you hit 3, you're pushing anyway, and I don't think we're hitting 4. So I'm going to go under 3 at that point because I think you could get 3, but I don't think 4 of these teams drop. I don't see City, Liverpool dropping points in any way. The others maybe you do. I like Sky said, Brighton coming off that loss to Luton Town. I don't see them going to Spurs and winning. even taking points. They've been so inconsistent this year, the Seagulls. Could Newcastle? I could see it because they lost to Forest at home back in December. You guys mentioned Arsenal. It's a derby match. It's a London derby. Maybe Arsenal's prime for a letdown. I don't know, but I'd really have to talk myself into 4, and I'm trying to do that right now. And I don't see it. I'm going to go under, and at worst, I think you push it 3.
I hit you guys with the Asian line. I know you weren't expecting that. I had to keep
Yeah,
it
I
interesting.
wasn't. Yeah,
I think I'll take the over purely because the only two that I feel really confident in would be City and Pool. Tottenham, like I said, if it weren't for the fact, I mean, Brighton did win on the weekend 4-1 after they lost to Luton Town midweek, so they maybe had a little bit of a bounce back. But again, like they're on the road. They're not haven't been great on the road under De Zerbi this season. And then the rest of them, Newcastle's away form. I wouldn't put it past them to drop points. Arsenal, like I said, I think this is a kind of a trap game. West Ham coming off of one of their worst losses of the season against United, whereas Arsenal coming off one of their best wins of the season versus Liverpool. It's one of those like weird, kind of trap games. So I could see Arsenal certainly dropping points in that one. Chelsea, I would never bet on or guarantee that they're going to get a win. And then Villa, like I said, this one feels to me like a match where United are figuring things out, and I think they can take advantage of Villa even on the road. So I think of those 5, if you told me 4 of them, the favorites drop points, it wouldn't surprise me. And I would expect probably at least 3 of them. Like I said, I think United will get a result. I think West Ham will get a result, and one of one of Brighton or Palace could get a result. So that will get you to 3 easily, and then it's just a matter of the other 2 being coin flips.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you, Scotty. I'm going to take the over. And what I want to say about that Villa United match, and I don't have the odds in front of me, but that to me screams like a United plus quarter of a goal, United draw no bet type bet to me.
Draw no bet for
definitely,
United is plus 130.
Yeah, I mean, plus quarter of a goal, if that's in like the minus 140 range, I think that's a fucking banger.
Minus 105.
Even better. There you go. I think that that would be my bet in that game. And what I'm thinking is, to your point, right? Take the 3 biggest favorites, right? Pool, City, anyone else. If you were going to parlay those 3, like, is that a slam dunk win? You think it would be, right? But there's always that one team that fucks you. There's always that one unexpected team in your parlay that kills you. So when I put it kind of in that context, does not shock me at all that 4 of these favorites could drop points. I think I kind of, we're talking ourselves into West Ham, into Palace, into United. I think one of Forest, Brighton, Burnley, Everton pulls something out. I'm going to go over with 4. Be interested to see where this lands when we come back next week. If it lands on 3, I'm just going to give myself odds maker of the year. But I think it's going to be a more interesting slate than it looks on paper. I think we're due for some chaos.
Yeah, peek behind the scenes as someone who loves a good parlay and was looking for locks of the week this week. I absolutely did consider trying to parlay City and Liverpool in some fashion, and could really only get it to like minus 210 with some totals played in there. So it's a tough look.
Exactly right. All right, let's move on to Serie A. Coach, we'll start with your team. We talked about Roma a little bit. 5th place. They are taking on 1st place Inter Milan. Roma is a dog, plus 310, plus 235 on the draw line. Inter, minus 120. If you're feeling Roma, draw no bet is plus 205. Double chance is minus 115. Over is set at minus 120. Under is minus 155. Both teams to score. Minus 110, no matter which way you like it. One thing I want to say, I will start off. Roma are getting more respect from the books than Juventus got last week. 1-0 Inter win over Juve. Juve was plus 320, and Inter was minus 110. So Roma getting 10 cents more respect on both of those lines. What do you make of that?
I think that's the home away dynamic, really. I think that's that one being played at the San Siro. This one's at the Olimpico. I think that takes away a little bit from Inter's, number. if you're someone who's betting Inter, it definitely helps you out. I think Inter, rightly a pretty big favorite here. I mean, if you look back at the first matchup back in match day 10, I just pulled up the numbers just to give you a refresher. It was a 1-0 score line. It took Inter to the 81st minute to win that one on Marcus Thuram goal. It was Mourinho ball at its finest for about 80 minutes when Roma just tried to hold out, hold out. Obviously the idea was to score on the counterattack. They had no counterattack to speak of in that match. So they at that point they were gunning for the 0-0 and didn't get it. But when you look deeper at the numbers, I mean, Inter's XG was 2.3 to 0.14 for Roma, 63-37 ball possession, 19 shots to 3. They did hold Inter to only 3 shots on target. One of them obviously went in from Thuram, but it was complete domination. Roma was able to nick points off of Inter last year. Didn't come anywhere close in this one. What makes this one so hard to kind of predict is De Rossi's style of play is so different than Mourinho's, right? And this is the first time he's playing a side that is clearly better than Roma. I mentioned earlier the sides that they just came off of those 3 wins against are currently 17th, 18th, and 20th in the table. Just missing Empoli there to hit the bottom 4, and they're coming up soon. So it's like, how will he approach it, right? Is he going to approach it as gung ho as he did against these 3 bottom feeder type clubs, where you have the better talent, you have a kingmaker like De Rossi, not De, I'm saying De Rossi, but De Rossi has a kingmaker in Dybala who can just take a match over, especially against a much weaker opponent. I'm curious to see how they try to link the midfield to the attack, because there was none of it the first time they played. Roma's setting up at a 4-3-2-1, 4-3-3 right now, which they were playing a 3-5-2 for all of the season, and much of the time under Mourinho was 3 in the back. So how do they defend the Inter attack with the 2 center backs? How does that change? There's just so many things that are going to be different in this match. I don't know if that's good or bad for Roma. Does it leave them open to conceding more? I do think so. But I also think it gives them a better chance to score than they had in that first match, because there was, I'm telling you, I watched that match in its entirety, and I was like praying for the 0-0 by the time Inter had scored that goal, because there was no way Roma was scoring a goal in the match. And you're like, wow, if they could get a point at the San Siro 0-0, that's like a victory in itself. So I'm curious to see how they approach it. I mean, Dybala's in great form. Like I said, Pellegrini's in great form. Can one of them find a goal? Can somebody find Lukaku's head in the box? I don't know. But
Does he have
my
a
hope
goal
is
since De Rossi took over? Because I feel like he's the one guy really that hasn't gotten going yet.
No, I don't think he's scored in a few matches now. No, it's been a lot of the other guys, right? It's been Dybala, El Shaarawy. Oh no, he might have scored the first match actually under De Rossi. I'm thinking that I'm gonna look back now. Was it he that was assisted by one of those 2 El Shaarawy passes? I'm thinking it was
Oh
Pellegrini and
yeah, that
Lukaku
first
that
one.
match.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he scored in that one. And he scored in their bogus friendly. So he has found the net a couple times since De Rossi's been in charge. I'm just hoping that they can find some ways to get him the ball on the counterattack. It's going to be interesting because, De Rossi's style of play has been to try to dictate possession so far. You're not going to probably do that against Inter. I do think it helps being at the San Siro because the crowd will be behind Roma, and I think there'll be that, momentum you get from the home crowd. I think the big thing for Roma is not to concede too early, because if you concede too early, I think it could get, out of reach really fast.
Scotty, let me put you on the spot here because I know, listen, we've praised Juve a lot. We've praised Inter enough, I feel like, this year, but you've definitely watched a lot of Inter over the past 2 years between Champions League and Serie A. They pretty much, I mean, the scoreline didn't show it, but they ran Juve off the park this past week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a one-sided game. There was maybe half a chance for Juve. I don't think they even had a shot on target. They had that one pass to Vlahovic in the box that he scuffed and didn't even get a shot off. So one-way traffic in that game. Coach has spent the better part of a half hour talking about how excited he is with Roma and how De Rossi's look good. You giving them any sort of shot, or do you think Inter just dominates this midfield, gets the goals from their top strikers that they expect to get, and on to the next?
From a betting perspective, I think I would. If you told me where I'm, putting money on, I think, Roma double chance at home. It's like basically even money, right? Minus 115, minus 105, depending on how you're looking at it. I think that's probably where I would like to put my money on, just because I think as Coach said, I think at home it's a big boost for Roma. I think they're on the right track. I know Inter played well against Juve, and Juve's obviously a little bit higher in competition levels against Roma, even in their current form. But I think there's something to be said about how you're carrying how Roma's carrying this momentum into this match, and they don't really need to get a win here, right? Like I think if you asked Roma fans following the match after a draw if they're happy with the result, I think the vast majority would agree that it's a good result.
Mhm.
Um,
I bet
and
Inter
it
fans
just
would too, quite honestly, coming off of that,
yeah.
you know.
So yeah, to that extent, like I think from a betting perspective, that's who I would you know support or put money on. If you're taking betting out of it and you're just looking at it purely from like an X's and O's tactics, who has the ability to dominate possession and score multiples. I think given how Inter's they're in Serie A and in Champions League, their mentality has always been a strong back line first and then build from there. That's probably what would make the most sense in terms of Inter coming out having a similar performance like they did against Juve, where they just dominate possession. They, like you said, they don't really let Roma get a sniff at goal, and if they do, it's on the odd occasion. And then Lautaro, who's been easily the best striker in the league, can he get it done? Can he get a goal or two or set something up um, to put up like I said, multiple goals? Because I think if Inter get two or three goals in this one, I don't see Roma getting a result in that case.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think the midfield is really. I want to see how Roma responds. I want to see how they stack up. Coach mentioned they changed their formation to three men in the midfield, right? 4-3-2.
Yeah, sometimes they list it as 4-3-3. I'd see it more as a
4-3-2-1,
4-2-3-1.
right?
Yeah.
So that's where Inter kind of dominates. We watched Çalhanoğlu last week, man of the match. I mean, sure, if anybody that's listening to this saw that, either watched the game or saw the highlight on Twitter over and over and over, some of the passes he made. I thought Barella had a really, really, really good game. They're obviously, up and down the wings. Inter are dangerous, and they did all that. And Lautaro had a bad game, and I don't really expect him to have two or three suspect performances in a row. So I think that goes against Roma. And I think they're really going to be fucking motivated to shut Lukaku down. I mean, I think he is the last guy they are going to want to score after all the drama between them, between his bullshit in the media, the loan spells, the this, the that. So I think that spells a little bit of a disaster for Roma. We obviously know Inzaghi is a better coach, but maybe the one little element of surprise that Rossi has is there's no tape on him, right? There's
Nobody knows what
3
he's going to
games
do.
worth. So
Yeah.
you don't know what he's going to do. They've got nothing to lose. I think you mentioned that as well. So should be fascinating. I do have a pick in this game, so I'll save that for our locks. But I mean, I have to say it going on 3 years in a row. One of the philosophies I have, if you're getting the league leaders close to plus money or better, you just kind of take them. And Inter's minus 120. We've said that, I think, now for 3 or 4 weeks with different league leaders. I think Real Madrid, I think we had Inter last week. Like, it hasn't failed us really. Inter at minus 120 is a great number. Could Roma pull something out? It'd be kind of cool to see, but we're going to have to see. They have to prove it, right?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned too, like no pressure on Roma now, right? There's kind of I think there's been a little bit of a weight lifted off their shoulders too with like the change of era at Trigoria, and also like Scotty mentioned Arsenal prime for a letdown, like it's Inter prime for a letdown after
Right.
beating Juventus, right? Could there be some of that element too as they have to travel on the road? They're thinking about Champions League,
Yep.
that could be too. So just things to keep in the back of your mind as you're
And
watching
I
it.
think that's the point of all points right there. It's they won the Super Cup, right? They come back. They took care of business against Fiorentina. They took care of business against Juve. They have Champions League the following week. Like, if there was a spot that you expect them to maybe rotate, that you expect a little bit of a letdown where 3 points doesn't necessarily spell the end of the world if you don't get it, this could be it.
And when I say letdown, like a draw could be a letdown, right? It doesn't have
Right.
to be Roma winning.
100%.
because they've lost one match all season. I believe off the top of my head, it was that match against Sassuolo early in the season, one of the worst Sassuolos we've seen. It looks even worse now when you look at it, looking back in hindsight. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one for Roma. But heck, like you said, you don't know. There's no tape on De Rossi and what he might do in this match, and maybe Roma pulls out a surprise, and we'll see. I just hope that Roma is, for me as a Romanista, I'll leave it here before we move on to Milan, is that I just hope that they're able to keep it competitive where they could, even if they lose, you don't throw away that momentum from the last three, because you could carry some of that into Feyenoord.
Now I feel
Momentum
terrible
FC.
about my Roma double chance take. We can lose, just keep it close. That's such loser mentality. Now I don't.
Feelings
well, my club is not battling for Premier League title, Scott. So
I'm done.
To take
I'm
small
putting
victories.
my money back on Inter. I take it back.
There you go.
I tried to be
Told
nice.
you. Nick School of Gambling.
Unbelievable. I can't believe that was gonna be your closing thought, Coach. I'll say before we go on to Napoli, as long as we keep it close, I'm happy. That hurts. At home.
I mean, in fairness, I feel like you kind of had that sentiment last week for Liverpool, and they wound up losing 3-1. So
I did not say that. I said I felt good about it. I was concerned that the books actually had Arsenal such heavy favorites. I said that's what concerned me.
Books had the drop on us in that one. Let's be honest.
Yeah, dude, the books
on
are
me
never
anyway.
wrong.
Yeah, it's a fucking fact. Speaking of wrong, a lot of people were wrong about Napoli. This podcast was not one of them. Scotty, certainly not one of them. They're in 7th place. They are taking on Milan, who is in 3rd. I think that 3rd place position pretty well locked up for Milan at this point, right? Just the title is probably out of grasp. I think 4th place is a battle between too many teams that are inferior. But Milan has been an absolute wagon for this podcast. We have been hitting money lines. We've been hitting team totals for them. We even combined both of those bets last week for the pod lock. Cashed that one. So they're favored here. Minus 115. Napoli is plus 265. The draw is plus 255. If you like Napoli, draw no bet. Plus 170. Double chance, minus 125. Over is minus 140. The under is minus 105. And both teams to score minus 155. So the books have kind of caught up. Milan games will have goals. I want to say 9 out of the last 10 have gone over. That's from memory. I don't have that in front of me. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But
7 straight, I can tell you for sure.
There you go. Then I definitely feel
streak.
good.
Yeah.
Feel really good about that number I just made up. Napoli is, I don't know, they haven't really looked better since the coaching change, but they got a result last week coming from behind in like the 70th minute. I think they scored 2 goals. Osimhen's still out for them. Man, on paper, this looks like a big mismatch. Can anybody make a case for Napoli?
I can't, and I'm going to criticize you for one thing, Nick, because you said Napoli are in 7th place. They're up to 7th place. They were sitting in 9th last week, and it took Lazio and Fiorentina to put together 2 duds performances.
Yes.
And Napoli coming back from a 1-goal deficit against Verona thanks to an own goal, I think, in like the 70th minute, and then Kvara got the game winner, in like the 85th or around there.
Yep.
Like they fell ass backwards into 7th place, which is, we say it all the time. That's classic Serie A. Like that's just how these things kind of work. But by no means do I think they're in better shape than they were, last week or a couple weeks ago. I still think they're kind of this middling club right now that are teetering on, disaster. I think, I'm not gonna say they're at rock bottom. That's not true at all. But I think they've kind of found their level. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. They've kind of found their level now. I think this is realistically where they kind of should be, given everything that's kind of transpired in the last 6 to 8 months. But I can't make a case for them to look any better than this because, nothing has really changed since we first started to call them, dropping down the table in end of October or whatever it was. So, yeah, Milan's been hot for us. I'm not going to doubt them now. Their offense and the attack should be plenty to get by Napoli. And I just don't trust Napoli to score in this one, really. Kvara will have to have a stunner or something along those lines because they've just been rather, mundane for the last few weeks.
And I'm looking at the live odds. Milan actually dropped to minus 110, so even better if you like them. Coach, they're at home. Do they handle business here?
I have a pick in this one.
Oh,
Yeah, I have a pick in this one. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna echo what Scott said though on Napoli. Like I don't trust Napoli at all. You know, De Laurentiis gave an interview. It was in his press conference, and he talked about the sacking of Garcia. Like he was like some big macho guy. Like he tried to play machismo. Like I exploded just before sacking Garcia. You know, why did I sack him? Because in his last match against Empoli, I made it known to him that I thought he was making too many mistakes. And he told me, let me do what I have to do. And he said, if someone responds to you that way, either you tell them to F off right away or stay quiet. During halftime, I went to the locker room, told them, what the F are you doing? You really want to get sacked? And at the end, that's exactly what I did. Once the match finished, I told him to go fuck off. Right. So like this is like Mourinho level as like an owner, right? This is like the kind of things like these guys say that they want to sound tough. And it's like this is who's running the club. He made a mistake hiring Garcia and is trying to like cover it up by telling the manager he was making too many mistakes and then told him to go F off later in the match, and then brings in Mazzari, who hasn't been relevant in so long. I mean,
more losses than Garcia.
Yeah, I mean, so they're I don't know where they go from here the rest of the season. Like Scotty mentioned, having that extra midweek window open for Lazio, like Napoli's on that trajectory too. Because those two might be fighting with Fiorentina for that Conference League spot at the rate it's going. Like, like who wants that? That's what it comes down to. I'd love to see it be Lazio, just so your boy Lotito can eat his words of that's like a loser competition. The loser who has never won a European trophy. But Napoli is certainly in a bad place, and without Osimhen, I can't trust them. I mean, what it took them to like 2 late goals last weekend, right, to even beat Hellas. So, they don't impress me much, and I don't think there's much to trust there to even take them double chance or draw no bet.
No way.
I'm gonna try to play devil's advocate in that like this is potentially their most important game of the year. Like this could be a Scudetto type game for them. Like
make or break their season, right?
We beat Milan, like that, like the bragging rights, and if they lose this game, then man, that's just despair, right? Like, but if they beat Milan, could they rally around that? That's the only thing I could kind of see, but I can't go against Milan now. They've been fucking awesome to us. They generate way too much offense. Napoli's got really nothing going for them. The books are telling us over. Milan games have obviously been automatic overs. I don't know that I would lay the minus 140 on it, but feels like a 2-3-1 win for Napoli. For Milan in this one.
It feels that way. It does. If Napoli does win, I think you're right. It'll be like for Napoli Twitter, which was so lively last season, it'll be like the Undertaker meme where they're just like rising and maybe they'll start chirping the Milan fans again. But it does feel like a 2-1, 3-1 type match to me. But I wouldn't lay the minus 140 on it. I think you got to find a different angle. Maybe an over 3 or something.
I'm going back in time here, and if you don't count the Super Copa, which was in wherever, Saudi, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was when you guys were. Napoli hasn't scored a goal away from home since. I mean, it looks like the November 29th in the Champions League against Real Madrid. That's their last.
I think they were shut out 3 straight games right before the last one, or
yep. Yeah,
in the league anyway.
In the league, they December 23rd lost 2-0 at Roma. Then 2 weeks later lost 3-0 at Torino. A couple weeks later drew 0-0 against Napoli. They drew 0-0 against Monza. Like they don't score away from home right now. It's just, and we know Milan are going to get theirs. That's a given. So I don't see Napoli coming out and like breaking through that trend, especially without Osimhen in this match. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Agree. No. Hey, nothing I like more than when we're all in agreement. So if you're betting this one and you have a play that's more obvious than Milan money line, because that's where my head's at. I'm sorry, I know Coach has a pick. He hasn't gotten to that yet. But if I know Coach the way I think he do, he's probably going to agree. So if anybody else has an angle on this one, be sure to reply to the show, reply to one of us. Would love to understand it. But I think light work for Milan.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Scotty, let's go for our 5th winning week in a row. Lead us off.
I appreciate you saying our winning week.
We're a team.
I am not
We are a
involved in
team.
this
No,
one.
we're a team.
sport.
No, we are a fucking team.
All right. Well, my first sure winner here, I'm going to take a constant winner, which is Manchester City playing Everton, as we mentioned at the top of the show. I'm going to take the rarely taken both teams to score no draw line. It's plus 145. My reasoning is this: we all are in agreement. City are going to probably destroy Everton. Everton have turned back into a pumpkin. They don't look good again. They had like a 3 or 4 game winning streak in December, but have since been duds of the year. Holland back with De Bruyne assisting. Like City are going to get 3 minimum. I'm looking at the chances of Everton to score. Right now, the books have them at minus 120 to score a goal. I think that's fair given City's lackluster defense. Even with everything that's been going on with their attack, their defense has always been suspect. Conceded last weekend as well, even with the full squad being back. So I think there's a very good chance that Everton do get a goal in this one. And instead of just taking like the minus 120, I'll take the extra juice at plus 145, given the fact that there's no way that City don't get a win and don't score multiples here. So that's my logic anyways.
Okay. I'll just go with the one I was hinting at right away. I'm going to go Milan money line versus Napoli minus 110. Like we said earlier, Milan made us sweat out the padlock last weekend, but Napoli doesn't impress me much at all. I expect the Rossoneri to get the job done at home against a Napoli side that is still without Victor Osimhen.
Yeah, agreed.
I like it.
Always agreed.
All right, I am going to go with my squad. I started off on a hate session. Thanks to you, Scotty, bringing it up. But I think they have to get it done this week to Cagliari. They are plus 110. They need a win. Got to calm the dressing room. Got to calm the critics, including myself. They're winless in 3 games. So Cagliari gave up 4 to Roma last week. I think that means Lazio should be able to get 2 goals. Lazio have not lost to Cagliari in 17 matches. They've been first to score in the last 5. I think they have to get it done at plus 110. That's just too good to pass up.
I like it. As much as I don't trust Lazio, this number jumped out at me as soon as I saw it on the Serie A lines. Cagliari looked awful against Roma. If Lazio can't get 2 in this one, then I think you will be having midweeks off.
No doubt.
All right. Second lock of the week for me. I'm going to take a risk with one that I said could be a loser at the top of the show. I'm taking Newcastle money line at Nottingham Forest. I know I said that Newcastle's away form has been abysmal, and it wouldn't be surprising to see them drop points here. I think that's fair, but I think they've actually started to look a little bit better in recent weeks. They've definitely. I think they are undefeated so far in January. They had a 4-4 draw against Luton Town, which kind of seems bad at first glance, but Luton's been playing pretty well themselves. And I think the fact that Newcastle are back to scoring, 3 or 4 goals in the last few matches is a good sign. But more so than anything, I think Forest are just trending in the absolute wrong direction. They're playing themselves right back into the relegation battle. So even on the road, I like Newcastle's chance to get a result here. And at plus money against a team of Forest's ilk, I think that's a really good value. So I'm just going to take them, not think about it, and hope we can get the 3 points on that one.
All right. My next one, I'm going to the Bundesliga. I am going the top of the table clash, Leverkusen hosting Bayern Munich, and I'm going Leverkusen draw no bet at minus 105. A win from Leverkusen at home would probably put them in a great position to end Bayern's reign on top of the Bundesliga. Xabi Alonso's side hasn't lost in 34 straight matches, including a 2-2 draw in Munich earlier in the season. I think they do better than that here, but will take the protection of the draw no bet at almost even money.
Coach Worldwide. Love it.
Yeah, probably the match of the weekend, really, across Europe.
Yeah, we probably could have talked about it a little bit more. Shame on us, but we got excited with our clubs as we usually do. But should be a good one for sure. Germany has been largely disappointing. Like a lot of the games, just generally speaking, hasn't been as high flying. The marquee matchups have been kind of okay. I think they've traditionally lived and died with Bayern, so good to see Leverkusen. Hopefully they can keep it up. Would love to see them get a result in this one. And I'm going to one of our other featured matches, Roma, Inter. I like both teams to score in this one. It's at minus 110. We talked at length, but Inter absolutely on fire. But Roma have also found the net an awful lot. Inter is scoring, so this basically is giving us even money for Roma to get one. I think that seems fair.
Sounds like similar logic that I had in my first pick, so can't hate it. All right. I will close things out with a parlay, as I like to do so often. It's going to be Luton Town money line and over 1.5 total at Sheffield United. It's plus 105. As I mentioned, I really like Luton Town and what they've been doing the last few weeks. Unlike Forest, they've actually been playing themselves out of the relegation battle. They're actually above the drop zone for the first time in, I think, all season, really. So shout out to them. They'll be at Kenilworth Road, which is one of those unique stadiums in the Premier League these days. So I like them at home. Certainly getting lots of goals against last place Sheffield United and their league's worst defense. They've conceded 59 goals this season. Second worst is Burnley at 47. So they've conceded 12 more goals than the next worst defense. So I think there'll be plenty of goals in this one. And Luton Town come home with 3 points and maybe a little bit more of a cushion over the relegation line.
Yeah, looking like they might save themselves. So this would be a big one. You know, those relegation 6-pointers always big, and this is one of them here. So I like it.
Yeah.
And pretty good
shout
number
out
there.
Elijah Adebayor, or Adebayo, excuse me. Elijah Adebayo. Guy is unbelievable. He's been scoring left, right, and center all last month or so. It looks like he's a true blue striker that's probably going to have a long career in the Premier League, or at least a long career in European football if he decides to go abroad.
All right, I'm going back to the Bundesliga with my last one. It is RB Leipzig and over 1.5 match parlay at Augsburg minus 110. Leipzig bounced back from a thumping at the hands of Stuttgart by the score of 5-2 by beating Union Berlin 2-0 last weekend. That also snapped a 3-match losing streak. Red Bull knows it needs to pile up the points against inferior opponents if it's going to secure a Champions League place for next year. They're currently 5th in the table, not too far behind both Dortmund and Stuttgart. They should get it done on the road by scoring multiple goals at 12th place Augsburg.
Coach Worldwide, we thrive when Coach goes to Germany not once but twice. So last week, guys, you watched me bet a horrendous Fiorentina match, right? That I called it a heat check for the pod. That bet did not turn out well, but we still made it through. I am going with heat check 2.0 because I am going back to Fiorentina. Last week's match, I think, featured like 30-something shots, 4 posts, to all the shit to not get the corners that we needed. We came up 3 short, but they're taking on Frosinone, and over 2.5 is minus 135. This one jumped out before I even started looking at any stats or past performances. Frosinone have hit the over in 9 out of 10 matches. Both give up a shitload of goals. Fiorentina need this win. They are right neck and neck with Lazio, with Napoli for being fucking terrible. But they are also without a clean sheet in their last 3 games to Frosinone. I think 2-1 game here is the absolute minimum, and we cash 3 goals, minus 135.
Right. Well, that brings us to Pod Lock. This week we're going to take a total. We got Bournemouth at Fulham over 2.5. Love. When you take an over, you usually want to try and find a guy that's hot and scoring goals. We have that with Dominic Solanke on Bournemouth. He's got 6 goals and an assist in his last 7 matches. So got to feel pretty good about him getting some sort of contribution to the scoreline on the road. Fulham, on the other hand, they've been shut out in 3 of their last 5 games, but last week against Burnley, they started to show some positive signs that they're turning things around. Scored 2 in that one. I think this one has the makings of like a back and forth multi-goal thriller. I think it's going to be one of those weirdly entertaining games that doesn't necessarily contain a premier name, but certainly a premier match at the end of it. So we'll happily take the over at minus 135.
Love it. All right, boys, that's going to wrap it up for our first show of February. As we mentioned, appreciate you listening. Appreciate you watching. If you're watching on YouTube, we are on all your pod platforms, whichever one you like the best. happyhoursports.net, written pieces and links to our work there. Of course, we are on Patreon, patreon.com/kickspixpod. Champions League coming back next week, so be on the lookout for our preview of the second round and our picks for the midweek. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next week.